Hi, everyone. My name is David Brown, and welcome to everyone joining us from around the world today. We're excited to have two great experts with us, some of ReversingLabs' best and brightest. Tim Stahl is ReversingLabs' Director of Field Threat Engineering and has over 2 decades of experience in threat intelligence, threat hunting. Eric Milam is ReversingLabs' Senior Director of Technical Excellence, making sure all of our technology is excellent, including what we'll be talking about today. He also has a storied resume as a security analyst, a threat researcher, intelligence lead, and chief product officer. So just a quick little overview on ReversingLabs. At ReversingLabs, we leverage the world's largest threat intelligence repository to protect software development and power advanced security solutions. Our threat intelligence repository is 7 times bigger than VirusTotals, and it keeps the most advanced cybersecurity organizations and Fortune 500 enterprises informed and in front of malicious actors. Our software supply chain security and threat intelligence solutions have become essential tools for advancing enterprise cybersecurity maturity globally. ReversingLabs operations are spread throughout the US and Europe, with offices in Zagreb, Croatia, and Cambridge, Massachusetts. Our customers are just about everywhere else around the globe. We have under 300 employees, and we're looking to hire more. So if you like what you see here today and have something to contribute, please feel free to reach out to us and check our career pages on the website. Okay, I think that's all the important stuff up front. Let's get into our topics. So just to make sure that we're all on the same page first, Eric, can you explain to us binary analysis and what makes static binary analysis different for those who are new to the concept?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks everybody for being here, and thanks for the intro, David. Much appreciated. Yeah, so I'll try to start off with kind of an analogy. Hopefully this works, but the way I look at it is like static binary analysis is like it's like kind of looking at a recipe without cooking it, right? You examine the ingredients, the instructions to kind of understand, what that recipe is going to make. Now, legacy binary analysis tools, right? These methods kind of they have a whole different path. They really involve kind of what I would say is cooking the dish, right? Running the program, and seeing how it turns out. And compared to obviously just reading the recipe, which is a static binary analysis, like these methods obviously come with a set of limitations to themselves, right? They can be time consuming, especially if you've got a lot of programs to run or recipes to cook, right? You've got some dishes or programs that have, hidden surprises that can be, hard to taste test because they behave differently in a controlled environment versus out, in the real world. And it might not really be efficient for quickly analyzing many recipes or programs. So because of that, the static binary analysis can really excel in those types of areas where the legacy binary tools, take up a lot of time, maybe, can't be analyzed as quickly, not as efficiently, maybe not put in part of a, automated program, those types of things. So that's kind of the basic. I hope that analogy kind of works.
Yep. So I'll follow up with that and just talk about a little bit more, right? We do see a lot of confusion here. When we talk about static binary analysis, we're talking about automated deconstruction of a package. We rip it down to all its atomic elements, unpack everything, and then do the scanning on that part. What people get confused with is the older definition, the longer standing definition of static analysis, which is, IDA Pro, which is some, really knowledgeable person with tons of experience ripping apart a program by hand, doing it. So that's what Eric's talking about, where it doesn't scale. You can't, it just takes a long time to do that. And then attackers know that, and they're throwing tripwires in place to make that even harder and longer. So, they're doing the same thing to us as we're doing to them. We're trying to make, the barrier to entry higher and higher and making it more resource intensive to get to us. They're doing the same way. They put things in their code to prevent quick analysis, to confuse those people. That doesn't work with us. And by the same token, we're not ripping it apart and trying getting to that working machine code. So there's no EULA violations for this kind of stuff. There's not, we do get that question a lot. This is, fair game. You're not breaking any rules, doing anything. So you get the visibility without all the legal issues attached to it. And then just to touch on the closed loop on all this analysis stuff is the other element we talk about is dynamic analysis, which, is great for malware. Malware is small, purpose-built stuff. Each piece of malware does in an infection chain will do certain things. Run it in a sandbox, it'll do those things. Regular software doesn't, right? It doesn't act that way. It's more complex and it requires user interaction. So you open Word in a sandbox, it's just going to sit there and, until you open a doc, nothing happens, right? I mean, there's, check for updates in the background and stuff, but it'll just do things, right? You have to have settings for it to do other things. You have to pick a new icon package before it goes to download some stuff. So that doesn't really work well for this kind of analysis. And that's why, static binary analysis bridges the gap across all those things and gives you the best of all those worlds.
Yeah, I want to touch on that a little bit more as well, right? Like, so again, go back to my analogies. I like what you said, obviously, about dynamic analysis. That's really the key here, runtime execution, right? And another analogy would be like, legacy tools are like detectives who watch a movie to see the program in action, right? But they have to wait for the show to start, right, to see what actually happens, and they learn by watching things unfold, right? And runtime execution, again, they're waiting for these programs that are on stage to do something. They see how the actors behave when they're performing, but they don't investigate until a crime's actually already in progress, right? So the challenge is that, obviously things can be missed, right? If the programs are doing something sneaky, I think, and you mentioned that you won't know until you actually execute that program. And that's why, newer methods like static binary analysis, it's more like reading the script ahead of time, right? You catch the issues before the show actually begins. You know what's going to happen, and you can find that stuff before or instead of waiting for something to happen, right?
Great background. So maybe you guys can explain a little bit more about ReversingLabs' approach to static binary analysis, and how is it a little bit different than what's out there in the marketplace in terms of delivering value to customers?
I'll go ahead and start with that one, Tim, if you're okay with that.
No, please.
I think that obviously we have a unique approach. We combine a lot of threat intelligence with our static analysis. It's really all about context and how things stack up. And the fact that we combine these, it's obviously we believe it's like our superpower, right? We use threat intelligence to guide the static analysis that's being done. And what this really means is, it looks at the code, knows what to watch out for based on real world threats that we've kind of already identified, or a semblance of that, right? Because we do use AI in our products as well. And it's like having someone who can identify it, stop it, and also provide a high level of context. So for threat intelligence, ReversingLabs, obviously, we keep an eye on what's going on in the world, right? Lots of stuff going on in the world. And we gather information and we gather all that context into, our platform so that it can be leveraged by every customer that we have. And then through the static analysis pieces we already kind of talked about, like we look at and examine the blueprints of the program without having to run it. So we can leverage all the threat intelligence we have and the technology that we have to do this static binary analysis, know what's going on with the program, know what could be an issue, and find those hidden issues and potential dangers and raise them, to the customers before they become an issue in the organization.
Good points. Yeah, it just makes everything you see more actionable. It just that enrichment and that extra layer of context helps a ton. I would add a couple of maybe underutilized or some things we don't talk about as much as for us, all our products, all our solutions are based off the same engine, and that honestly is a hidden superpower that you don't see. Right? If you get a report from a piece of software in one product and you run it in another product, they're going to correlate. You're going to see the same behaviors. You're going to see the same elements. So if you're doing software supply chain, you see something sketchy, and then you need another team to do deeper analysis, then pitch them the sample, they run it in the other box, they're going to see the same things you saw. They'll just see different context, different information. So I love that. And the really handy piece throughout the UI and just in general is workflow. To me, that as an analyst, you're overworked, too many things to do and everything has to be done right now. It's really, really difficult. So anything that enhances your workflow. So I love the workflow in the platforms themselves. I think it's really well defined. 1 or 2 clicks get you from, hey, I might have a problem, to here's the file level details. Here's the information you want. I love that. And I really like that we integrate, right? We have an API, we have a CLI and a software development kit. So you can use our tooling and our reporting in whatever workflow you have established right now. So we fit into whatever you have going on right now.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that too, I mean, we, that adds to basically the speed, accuracy, and scalability, right, within our product, which, as you know, like especially if you're working in a SOC or someplace else, you mentioned like mean time to detect and mean time to respond is the #1 way in which you're going to be measured. And so having the context that you need to make an informed decision as quickly as possible is paramount, and I think that's really where we excel here, right?
Yep, I agree. And Eric, being in this industry a long time, using a lot of tools and different functions as you go, everyone wants to talk about they have a platform. But to be honest, like I'll pick on McAfee a little bit because they don't technically exist anymore. They didn't develop their tools, they bought them. So they would buy another company, had a good solution, they would reskin it so it looked the same as the other ones, but it functioned differently,
Yeah.
So there are a lot of platforms out there, that don't really function. They aren't really a core platform. They aren't integrated where ours are.
Yeah, I know that like in my past, we were always, and I think everybody searches for this, that single pane of glass, right? That elusive single pane of glass, which probably doesn't really exist, right? But the way in which we integrate with the different programs and we understand that that's, you don't want to go 15 different places to try to get an answer when seconds matter, right? And so we've kind of built our technology and this specific technology around that, with
Yep,
that in
especially these
mind.
days,
So,
right? With the skills
yep,
gap out there, and there's not a ton of experience. People aren't coming into security from IT anymore, so they don't know those basic things.
yeah.
The more you can do to upskill them, to give them all the information they need, then the better off you are and the more productive you are.
Yeah, I mean, I got my degree in psychology and philosophy, so yeah, case in point.
Well, great. Well, Tim, you mentioned a buzzword, so I'm going to call on you next. You mentioned that fantastic word, actionable, right? It's great to have all of this fantastic data and break down what's going on, with inside an application. As threats continue to evolve and get more complicated and challenging to discover, how do solutions that use static binary analysis kind of help that user take actionable results?
Yep. So to me, really, it's all about visibility. This kind of visibility, you had to be a reverse engineer. You had to have specialized tool and experience and education to be able to do these kind of things. And it took a long time. So you had to be selective with what you could analyze, and there were limits. Now this visibility into software, how it works, how it functions, is beyond what we're used to from just vulnerabilities and network traffic, right? Because that's all you had before. It was a black box. You could see what it did after it did it on your network. You could see what was coming from it in your EDR or your network appliances or whatever. But now you can look in there and you can see behaviors, which is a game changer, right? You can understand what this thing is capable of doing. Now you can, augment your SOC and your defenses, right? If I know that this piece of software is only going to talk to these 5 domains or these 5 URLs for updates and whatever else, I can turn to my SOC and say, here, make sure these are open so we don't block any user stuff, and tell me if it ever communicates with anything outside of this. But you just made the SOC that much better. You enhanced their performance and you reduced false positive rates. You almost gave them another full-time employee if you can do that across your stuff. This stuff didn't exist before, right? So now like you mentioned a little bit before about, data. We don't want to give you data because that's what tools just dump crap in a UI or something. And then you're like, what do I do with all this stuff? We pass you information. We say it can do these behaviors, it can do these things, it's capable of talking these protocols or whatever. And that enhances your ability to then do analysis and tell what's good, what's bad, what's normal, and where do I need to dig further.
Yeah, I mean, especially since I like what you said about, again, I always use the word context because that's what we were always searching for. But the increased sophistication of modern threats nowadays, like you could have a ton of data and it doesn't mean anything. Like intelligence is not a data dump, it's the correlation of that data, right? And since modern cyber threats have become obviously much smarter and harder to deal with, harder to detect, right? They're very sneaky long-term attacks now, right? It's not smash and grabs, although those obviously still exist. But they're attacking all different types of things now, smart thermostats, you name it. Like any IoT is a huge a huge industry, obviously. But yeah, I think the point that I would piggyback on here was that the biggest challenges are finding these threats early and stopping them before they can cause harm, right? You know, protecting against attacks that come from sources we usually trust as well. You know, third party software supply chain, software updates, email from friends. You know, you name it. Like all those things are in play. When I was a red teamer, I'd always tell the folks, your job is to stay only one step behind me, because you have a million different ways to defend and I have one way that I need to get in, right? So it's definitely complex and it's difficult, right? So
Agreed. It's a tough solution. It's a tough, defenders are, behind the curve, from the jump now, and
yeah.
attackers are getting better. It's more like a business to them. They respond quicker. So any tools you can get, any deeper visibility, any of those details and those integrations and those enrichments you can get, just empower your folks and give them a fighting chance.
Yeah, I think if I can touch on, obviously, too, like what I think are the three main kind of areas where, static binary analysis really provides insights. It's around, obviously, malware vulnerabilities and suspicious code. Again, just carrying on with what we were talking about, like knowing these things, finding them early is super important, right? Being able to again raise those red flags before the program has to run. Obviously suspicious code analysis is pretty big right now with some of the attacks that have happened in the recent years, right? Finding anything strange or unusual, right? Something fishy that alerts the developers to take a closer look, not necessarily your AppSec team, right? Like that's really kind of where technology helps live, I think, as well. Again, early and often makes things actionable.
Agreed. Yeah. And like you said, supply chain is important. Again, this level of visibility wasn't available before. There are a lot of supply chain tools, but we keep, in security, you hear shift left. That's great. But in development, you can shift too far left, right? You want to have tools that are deeper in the supply chain you want to catch things as close to the spigot as you can throughout the whole process of your integration lifecycle. But one of the things that wasn't available for is the check of that last package. Once everything's compiled, all the dependencies are in there, all the other code that you're going to ship, then you run that analysis on that package to make sure nothing bridges the gap between your code that you've checked 10 different ways and the third-party packages and all the other elements that are in there to make up that package. Before, they were really great at doing their own vendor code, which we generally see, but it's the other stuff that comes on afterwards. And that's where you get hit in the supply chain stuff. And if you're not looking at that, then, you're missing a big, a vector of attack.
Yeah, you had a terminology, I forget. It wasn't file rot. What was it?
File rot.
Is it file rot?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, because we see a lot of, obviously, when we analyze these files, we see a lot of developers developing code using really ancient pieces, and it's kind of if it's not broke, don't fix it kind of thing, right?
Yep, exactly. Right. If it's working,
and then before you
they're
know it,
not going to
15
touch
years
it.
has gone by, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's where you see a lot of these vulnerabilities pile up. On top of that is, development best practices evolve over time. We're always getting better. We're always improving the way we can do it. But if you're not updating those third-party elements and they're 5, 6, 7 years old, then you're getting all these missing mitigations that opens up to more stuff. You're piling up more vulnerabilities. But like you said, if it doesn't break, no one's going to go in and fix that. So if you don't have the visibility to see that, then it's a problem you don't even know exists. And it's a risk. It's a long-term risk for all your customers.
I want to circle back to something that we kind of mentioned before, which is the data dump that comes with a lot of analysis tools, and potentially kind of mixed in there, a lot of false positives, which kind of sends everyone scrambling in lots of different directions, right? So how does static binary analysis, help, the actual person that's using these tools and kind of trying to hunt and speed that, time to resolution?
Yeah, let me go ahead and start here, because obviously, again, in my past life, I built a SOC, and false positives were the scourge, right? So, false positives means a couple things to me. It means time wasted, and time away of dealing with, a couple things, dealing with the real issues that might come up. A lot of times you're looking for what I call a needle in a needle stack, right? When it comes through, when a real threat comes through, and I know that people are inundated with stuff that they have to analyze and look at. And again, that takes time and and if those are false positives, a lot of people obviously consider that a waste of time. So it has a huge impact on your security operations and obviously in this case on your development program as well, right? So using static binary analysis can help kind of minimize those false positives by focusing on on concrete code analysis. So kind of what the goal is, what you're looking at. You also, if you're an app developer, what to expect. So those things obviously help, and you probably already know where the issues are to some extent, before you do the analysis. And so when you do, then you can start putting those things and start prioritizing those things in a way that makes sense to mitigate, right? Versus just dealing with things that come in, one after the other, which false positives tend to do. And I don't think I need to beat that dead horse. Everybody kind of knows how false positives just are a complete time suck for an organization. So.
Yep.
Tim, I'm sure you love false positives though, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Because you never tune your detections and you just, everything out of the box works like the vendors say it does. And so to me, honestly, the flip side of that is actually more important to me, is the false negative. It's thinking that you're okay. And we sort of touched on this in the last question, right? Is if you can't see that you have an issue, if you don't have the right tools and the right visibility, then you think you're okay. Those are really a lot worse, is not knowing that something's there. So binary analysis, the static binary analysis that we do and other tools do, is it tells you it's ground truth. This programmer can do these things. These URLs are embedded in this thing, right? All of these things are there and visible to you, right? So then you can make that assessment. That's much better than, like, again, dynamic analysis. You run a thing and it doesn't do anything bad. You think you're okay. But what if they had, detections in there where they knew it was running in the sandbox and it didn't do anything? So thinking you're safe when you're not is even worse than trudging through a bunch of false, a million alerts for something. And your SOC works all day like crazy and doesn't accomplish anything because they look at all the wrong stuff, like you said, right? And then the right stuff, sort of the things that you want to find, to slip through the cracks because you just don't have the time and the resources. So,
that I forget the saying, but there's a saying, I think it's attributed to Mark Twain, I'm not sure, but it's something like, it's not the stuff you're unsure of that hurts you, it's the stuff you're confidently wrong about that hurts you, right? So then that's the worst. But yeah, obviously at ReversingLabs, we try to limit false positives, and the way we try to do that, again, I'm going to circle back, and this is something I'll probably sound like a broken record by the end of this, which is really leveraging threat intelligence and contextual analysis. It's really about the amount of information that can be provided to you to understand what's going on, that even if it is a false positive, the ability to get through that very quickly and understand this is a false positive and here's why it's a false positive, and I'm going to move on and feel comfortable in moving on, that you didn't miss something. That's really, where our products try to strive. Obviously, we want about 1,000, right? And be pure signal. But the goal is even if something comes through, it's I used to call it the right type of false positive. It's still ringing the right bells that it needs to be looked at, but you'll be able to assess it extremely quickly and understand what actions need to be taken, if any.
Great. Just a quick reminder to everyone, feel free to drop in any questions you have for Tim and Eric into your Q&A button. And then we're going to zoom out a little bit next. And I'm going to ask Tim this question. How have threats and attack surfaces and all of our risks evolved over the years? And why is technology like static binary analysis crucial for enterprises that are trying to tackle these, right? They're facing a lot of these threat vectors and trying to overcome them.
Yeah, that's a good question. So again, being from, the threat intel, threat hunting background, over the years, it becomes this arms race, right? And this is what we're seeing, this constant battle between, we find a way to stop this, then they adjust their tactics or they add a new technique and now they get through. And it's just back and forth thing. Well, a lot of that is targeted towards the tools that we use that they know are primary tools, like dynamic sandboxing. Now there's, they put all these different elements in there to tell if it's running a sandbox that doesn't execute bad code or doesn't do anything to hide what it's trying to do from you. So they're trying to hide from these tools, but you can't do that stuff with the static binary analysis, right? We run through all the code, we know it's in there. Whether it executes or not in the sandbox doesn't matter. We still see it. So to me, that's the big thing, is that you avoid all that. So let them spend all their time, trying to kill the value of one tool. I have this other tool that's even better.
Yeah, again, when I ran the threat intelligence team at my last organization, we had sandboxes and we had to constantly tweak and do research on how to tweak things to get it to look like it's not in a sandbox, right? And again, that takes people power. It takes time, and time is money, right? And so an analyst might spend a whole day just trying to get something to run in their sandbox. Obviously that's not going to be the only way they're going to analyze it, but it's an important thing that they want to see. And sometimes it just takes time, well, not sometimes, all the time it takes time. And that's, again, that's time that could be better spent on other areas.
Yep. Especially in this
So,
case, because it's not just
yeah.
any analyst doing that stuff. It's your senior analyst, your most
Right.
capable and experienced folks. Now they're doing engineering stuff on a regular basis,
Yeah.
and it takes them away from doing the real, the important stuff. That's critical. Again, it
Yeah,
falls back to that skills gap. You may have 2 or 3 really talented people on your entire team, and they just spend all their time putting out fires doing this stuff instead of what they're actually there for.
right. And with the, obviously with the battlefield always changing out there, there's 2 really big kind of challenges that still exist, I think, or at least still top of mind. APT is obviously that's a been around for a long time, right? That APT groups, they're not going anywhere. And of course, more recently, supply chain attacks, right? So you have these APT groups that are still super smart, sneaky. They don't rush. They plan carefully. They stay hidden, right? They're a big worry because they're tough to find. When they strike, they could cause serious damage, right? And then supply chain attacks. When they sneak into a trusted place where software is made or delivered, I mean, that's it's really bad. It's like like going back to the analogy, it's like tampering with the ingredients in your kitchen. And they're a huge concern because they simultaneously affect many people and organizations. And the key thing for us is trust, right? We talk about trust delivered, right? And this really, this is how they exploit the trust in that supply chain. It's super dangerous. And it goes to your point, like they're treating this like a business, and they're building ways to take advantage of these and evolve their capabilities, but also their reach. So.
Yep. Agreed. Yeah. From that perspective, that intersection of APT and supply chain is right now, I think, is the most dangerous thing out there. It's the thing you have to be most concerned about, because if you're not if you don't have the tools, like we said, right, if you don't have the visibility to analyze the software you're running on your network, your tools that your developers are using or your security team is using or whatever, then you're blindly trusting everything that's on your network. This is a tool that you can use to then reduce that attack surface, to tell when something doesn't. And that's the best thing I think about SSES or, supply chain stuff. If you have that visibility, you don't have to be this expert that says, oh, I know what this is. Now I need to go reverse engineer all this stuff. If I see something in a report, if I run a new update and it does something different than the previous version, and I look at the vendor's release notes, I don't see anything that indicates a new feature requiring, the use of this protocol, then I just say, you know what? I don't know what's going on, but it doesn't look right to me. Like you were saying, anything that's suspicious, anything that's weird or unique is what security teams will key on. If it does something I don't think is right, I'm just not going to push that package. I don't have to have the right answer. What's the big deal of delaying an update another week and not talking to the vendor, making sure you get, a good answer before you push that out? Or maybe you just skip that update and wait and see. Let everyone else be the canary in the coal mine, and you just wait and see. Like 3CX, you literally, if you'd have waited 1 week for that poisoned update, everyone else had been hit, you'd have been fine. But APT groups like this, because of the blast radius, And again, they're not like crime groups where a criminal group, will hit this if they do a supply chain attack, and they'll just spread ransomware blindly at everybody who gets hit, right? APT groups want that blast radius so they can see all of the victims and pick and choose the ones that they want. So if you're going to be targeted, this is one of the ways they're going to do it, and you won't see it coming unless you're scanning your stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's about staying ahead, right? Or doing your best to stay ahead of a super intelligent opponent, right? It's about really fixing problems before they're exploited, right? Again, static binary analysis basically helps us, spot those weaknesses and fix them, and then stopping the known threats, right? Checking the software against a list of known threats is always important, right? That takes care of that file rot. And I think, I know it sounds super basic, but those three things, right? Those last two are really where we shine, I think, and where people, like, where focus needs to shift as well. And by being able to look at one package and understand kind of everything, that like you said earlier, I think you said, not to steal your words, but that those are tools that they didn't have before, right? And so, since we're a group of nerdy, geeky engineers that love to come up with stuff, we were always thinking, like, how were we hit? Or, even I spent a lot of time as a bad guy. How would I do it, right? And all that's really taken into account when we sit down to try to build something into our products.
Yep, great point.
So last question here before we jump into some of our Q&A from our guests. Everything is moving so quickly in our space, right? We're seeing lots of new developments, lots of really interesting and cool products and solutions that are coming out right now. I'd like both of your opinions, and Eric, maybe we'll start with you. How does static binary analysis fit itself, within this larger context and kind of the future landscape of what you've been talking about, complex file deconstruction?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if I was to go back, I mean, there's a couple of things, right? But I really think the relevance of the static binary analysis for the thorough inspection is really one of the main things that stands out to me. Again, it's about, early problem detection, finding those issues before they cause problems, fixing it, which is always good practice, right? It's something that you want out of the people who are developing the software for you. Being efficient and scalable, right? No matter how big or complex the program is, static analysis can check it quickly, and that's something that's super important. Again, we talked a lot about how time is of the essence, right? This is important, obviously, as the software keeps kind of growing and becoming more complex. Think about all the pieces that are in software nowadays, right? That weren't there, even a decade ago. Again, stopping the known threats, having that just base foundation of these are the issues that are there, and we know we're gonna be able to tackle these for you. I'd say just a couple more thorough checking, right? Like being able to thoroughly check stack analysis obviously looks closely at every single part of the code, so it doesn't miss something, and it's important to find even those tiny issues. I think some of the tampering that's taken place, when you look at the code, it's like one line of code or 2 lines of code. It's not a huge shift. And then obviously, being able to work with modern tools, right? We talked about being able to integrate. Continuous integration is super important, continuous development. And it works with all of those. It's not limited to a certain type of technology. So it fits really well within the workflow.
Yep, good, nice overview. The two big things for me, and again, we've touched on this bits and pieces throughout the other questions, but to me, I love the fact that we're using a proven technology that we've been using to hunt down and dig through malware. And now we're applying that same depth of knowledge and visibility to other problem sets like supply chain. So it's not this, you're not starting from scratch. You're using the same information, you're just presenting it in a way that answers a different question. And then that feeds into sort of the upskilling of folks using this tool, right? You don't need, years and years of reverse engineering. You don't have to read a machine code or do any of that crazy stuff. So, there are some people that need this tool for requirement purposes, right? You need an SBOM. we can generate you that full SBOM based on the final package, so you know exactly what's all in there. But the other things, right, the behaviors and the networking pieces and stuff, you could be, a risk and compliance person and look at this. And if you're looking at every update you look at, you're just looking at the differences between that, you get a feel for the program. And when something doesn't look right, you've won, right? That stop, nope, we're not doing this. That's all you need, right? And then you can pass it on to other teams, but it had a positive impact on your org by stopping something. And there's no downside, right? For supply chain stuff, delaying an update is no big deal, right? I mean, you're missing a feature for another couple of weeks or whatever, unless it's a security hotfix. There's no downside. So it's a great way to set your team up, no matter who's doing this stuff, to get that extra value. You upskill those people. You don't need that specialized talent. And if you have that talent, that's great, because then the things that look weird can go to them and they can do their thing and jump in like a superhero. But you get more out of this. And then it's, again, like we talked about, instead of just throwing up data, it's enriched information. We have that context, we have the threat intelligence, all those things going into this that aid that assessment, that help you make that decision to say this is good or bad. And making junior analysts or mid-level analysts be able to use this tool and be successful with it, I think is a game changer.
Yeah, I like what you said earlier. I always like to say, what we try to provide is a window to the data, right? SSCS, we have all this, these IOCs, we have all this data, we have all this intelligence that exists. And what we really want to do is be able to provide a window to that makes sense for the people who are looking at it, right? So that they can get the answers that they need super quick, right? So they can understand what's there, so they can dial into the things that, as you say, are off, right? And escalate those as needed. So
Yep. I like again, you'll know this, right, from experience and from working with all the tools we've had to deal with over the years and how bad they used to be even a decade ago. Just the ability to go in and do this, to allow anyone to do this. But now you have that rich information. You can do other things with it. I think we touched on this earlier, but I want to just bring it up again, right? This information is applicable to multiple teams. So you can get value out of this multiple different ways, right? Knowing what network communications are going to happen, passing that through your SOC so they can make sure it doesn't block, especially for EDR, right? EDRs are notorious for blocking applications, right? Especially on, where there's a lot of development work going on. It can get in the way and really hamper production of other teams. This is a way to know going in, whether it's a purchasing decision, right? Now I can look at three different things, and beyond price, I can do a legitimate risk assessment. What data is this collecting on my systems? Is it, is this thing that's supposed to just, be a little quick tool for like the accounting department? Why is it mapping network drives, right? Those things before you purchase then help you again, right? So this one tool and these one output, especially for supply chain, supports the SOC, it supports purchasing, it does all these other things. You can do, before we were doing risk assessments based on external stuff and do a vulnerability scan and do your best with the information that was available. Now you have the full visibility. You can do a legitimate risk assessment that matters and has an impact. So we empower a lot of different teams, but by the same token, right? We've all run into tools where the tool gets in your way at a certain point, right? If you have a certain level of expertise and you've been doing threat hunting or doing all this stuff for a while, it's great to have tagging and ways to group things. And I can, get a drop down and click a button and see just the networking stuff or whatever. But we also, the deeper visibility and the way to the regex searches and some of the panels that we have. So I can just avoid all the basic stuff, for a junior mid-level analyst, and I can dig in and I can run regex and I can see exactly what I want to see and do exactly what I want to do. Where a lot of times that's, the tool tries to be so helpful to junior folks that it gets in the way of senior folks, and you can't get around the tool, where we offer both sides of that.
yeah, going back to what you said about empowering, in my last life, the way we really tried to leverage the ReversingLabs products was to bring it in as early as we could into our platform. And then we had it basically populate a data lake, and it was available not just to research folks. It was now available to our product, our MDR service, obviously our product folks if they wanted access to it. But it was it was a force multiplier, I guess, for lack of a better term, across the entire organization. So it definitely had for us a lot of reach and a lot of strength, and empowered a lot of people that if I would have just bought it, say for my research team or for the AppSec team, it wouldn't have had that reach. It wouldn't have been able to really help out the entire organization the way we ended up leveraging it. So obviously, I would be amiss if I didn't talk about AI here. Obviously, AI is a big thing. We do use machine learning here as well, and have AI driven techniques for deeper analysis. I think that that really helps us spot kind of new threats and reduce mistakes, right? Those false alarms that we were talking about, and learn from the new tricks from attackers that are out there. Obviously, it can also handle big complex puzzles, just like modern software is becoming, as we talked about. It really supercharges our ability to detect as well. So being able to leverage that type of technology in static binary analysis, without having to be an AI expert, right, or a machine learning expert on your end, is super powerful. And I think that's going to continue to help us adapt and put more power in the hands of the people who use our products.
Great. Well, let's jump into a few of the questions we've received from the audience. We have a couple asking for a demo of the technology. I would point you directly to the website, and you can actually check out Tim's great webinar series that he has on the deconstructing software, and you can see how this actually works live. If you'd like a deeper dive, right, obviously you can contact us through the website, and we're happy to set up some private one-on-ones. There's a specific question that is coming in here about how static binary analysis handles packed and obfuscated samples, and then malware that's delivered in stages, not all at once.
Tim, do you mind? I know you do that deconstruction series. Do you mind tackling that?
Yeah, I was trying to type an answer to one of the questions. What was that again, real quick?
Yeah. So how does static binary analysis, how do we handle packed and
okay, gotcha.
And how does malware delivered in stages? How about malware delivered in stages?
Yeah. So, as we talked about, the base engine that runs all these things has been in production now for like almost 15 years. So this is proven in the field. Turning that tech to supply chain stuff or whatever in these more and more complicated packages, this has been updated over time. So we're monitoring what we can unpack. I would think we unpack over 4,000 different file types. So we're always adding more. We have threat intel teams, we have research teams, and we're doing these updates constantly to catch up, right? We know if we're seeing a lot of something, we don't do that, we'll add that to the package. But we have most of the things covered. Over the last 15 years, we've seen just about everything there is to see. So we keep up on it as well. But that is taken care of. We unpack a ton of different things. We recognize over 4,000 file types. So we'll recursively unpack as well, which again is important, right? If we'll unpack, and if there's containers inside that, right? If there's a zip file and then there's a DLL file. Inside that DLL file, there's other code. And so we'll rip it down to the bits and pieces. And then that's where we run that scan. So you do get that full visibility across everything.
Great. And then our last question here, in some cases for protection and licensing reasons, part of executable code is actually encrypted, and proper functioning requires a key for a particular hardware or a dongle. How does binary analysis handle such cases?
I think you answered it yourself.
Right? Back at you.
Yeah.
If it's encrypted and you need a key, then you can't read it. It doesn't matter what magic you have working behind the scenes, it's still going to be encrypted. So there are things that just, are impossible.
Yeah. Okay.
We will analyze what's not encrypted, right? If only a piece of it is encrypted. So we'll do our best, but yeah, just like those hacker shows when they say, hold on, it's encrypted with 256-bit. Let me try something. They pound on the keyboard for 10 seconds and say, it's unencrypted now. That doesn't happen. We all know that's not real.
Right. Okay, well, Tim, Eric, thank you so much for all these wonderful insights. I definitely learned a lot today. Just want to let everyone know that check back our website often. We have a number of great upcoming webinars on topics that will be relevant to you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us anytime. And thank you everyone for your time today.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for
Appreciate it.
joining.